Hey guys, it's Mason, and this is Wrestling in the Dark, the only professional wrestling podcast brought to you by a blind wrestling fan. Today, I wanted to bring you a mix-up. This is the freeform version of the podcast where I talk about different topics that might have been sent to me by listeners or just might have interested me over the last week in wrestling. I wanted to talk about today the way women are represented in WWE, a little bit of AEW Fyter Fest talk, as well as maybe taking a little look at the SmackDown Live tag division. So, if you want to find out what I've got to say today, stick around, leave your comments down below if you have any thoughts on any of them, and I'll see you on the other side. I wanted to start today's show by talking about women's wrestling. Now, I don't watch the main roster on a regular basis. I haven't watched a Raw or a SmackDown in its entirety in quite a while now, but I do like to keep up to date with what's going on through wrestling podcasts and through the WWE YouTube channel. So I wake up in the morning after a Raw or a SmackDown and I go and look on the WWE YouTube channel, and I go and watch some of the clips and see if there's anything that, might entice me to go and watch it that week. So I noticed a few things about the women this week that I wanted to talk about. Now, I'm a little bit wary of getting into this subject because I realise that I could make myself sound stupid, or I could make myself look bad, I guess, in this situation. But I wanted to talk a little bit about how women are booked in WWE and see how other people felt about it, especially anyone that might listen that's a female wrestling fan. So let's take Nikki Cross and Alexa Bliss. What's going on between them at the minute, I actually think, is a somewhat quite a deep storyline that's got some really nice parts to it. You've got Nikki Cross, who is someone that's always felt like an outcast, and she has always felt like she's friendless, etc., etc. And you've got Alexa Bliss, who is manipulative and is good at working people, and she's offering friendship to someone who feels like she's never had a friend. And I think that's actually sort of beautiful in a way, because it's just, I don't know, I think that's something that you'd see in an actual TV show, with someone that feels like an outcast and feels like they don't fit in, doesn't have any friends, etc., etc., being used by someone who is much stronger psychologically and can manipulate them easily towards what they want their goal to be, which obviously with Alexa is beating up Bayley for her. So I actually think that's a good way to go, and I think that it's quite a deep well that you can draw from with the storyline. But I do feel that it's a little bit petty. I don't know, just because you've got Alexa coming and telling Nikki Cross that there's been horrible things said about her on Twitter, and Bayley even liked one, and sort of pumping her up and telling her that when she is standing across from Bayley in the ring, that she should just see all those people that have said this horrible thing and that horrible thing about you, and take out your aggression on them. Don't even see it as Bayley. So that, like I said, the actual sort of storyline to it I quite like, but the fact that it's being driven by something, a schoolyard feeling as a Twitter feud, seems a little bit petty. And the other thing that sort of bothered me was Ember Moon. So Ember Moon's been having trouble with Deville and Rose. She ripped up Mandy Rose's Muscle and Fitness magazine or something like that last week, and this week Deville and Rose broke Ember Moon's Nintendo Switch, which, okay, a Nintendo Switch is probably a couple of £100 or dollars, whatever you want to call it. It's probably fairly expensive, and breaking something of someone's, breaking someone's property isn't isn't acceptable. It's not acceptable behaviour. But I'm just not sure how I feel about it in terms of motivating a wrestling feud. And it's these two things, the Twitter thing and the video game thing, that I'm taking side by side and sort of looking at it. And I'm just wondering, would they ever book the men like this? See, I don't necessarily mind these two motivations, and I do think, as it's been pointed out to me with the video game console, that if you gave that to Xavier Woods, that could easily work. If there was, you know, say Rusev and Nakamura were being bullies backstage and they broke Woods's, like, whatever game console that he might have, then that would work as a feud. And I agree with that, and I do think that it would work, and it would actually be a fairly interesting motivation. But my issue here is that I don't think WWE would ever do that. I don't think that they would ever book Xavier Woods in that sort of storyline, or any other man. I don't think that they would ever have Twitter be a motivation as to why people are wrestling. Certainly not on the upper mid card to main event scene or whatever, which I guess isn't the case with Deville and Rose and Ember Moon, or even Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross. They're not necessarily in the main event scene. But basically what I'm trying to say is, can you imagine if Ricochet and Seth Rollins were in a feud, and or weren't in a feud yet, they were just sort of, they'd had a few little altercations, and then Roman was coming along and he was like, hey Seth, Ricochet is saying horrible stuff about you on Twitter. Oh, I can't show it you though, because, you know, I've got Ricochet blocked and I can't show you what he said, but trust me, he did say it, or and whatever. I feel like they wouldn't do that, because I feel like WWE would see that as the men not looking as tough. So where I don't necessarily think that the motivations of being mad at someone for saying horrible things on Twitter or breaking personal property, you know, you've got cyberbullying and destruction of property, which aren't necessarily bad motivations, but it's just a matter of, I just feel like they give the women the schoolyard drama because they feel like that's more in line with why women fight, or like what their arguments are about, like almost as if they think that they're petty. I don't know. It's a really weird dynamic for me, because I just feel like something like the Nikki Cross Alexa Bliss thing, you've almost got someone that's being quite a psychological bully there. Imagine if we'd have got this more as a pre-taped kind of skit. And imagine in a darkened room, and Nikki is sat on like a horrible, uncomfortable looking chair, and Alexa is in like a nice armchair, and the one light that's in the room is shining on Alexa while Nikki's left in the dark. And she's telling Nikki about all the things that she's telling her what Alexa is pretending is her secrets. You know, I can trust you, I can be myself around you, and and then she does more or less the same thing that she's doing of, oh, I don't know why the women say such bad things about you. You know, you're not a freak, you're not an outcast. I don't think that you. I don't think that you're a freak. I don't think you're worthless, or whatever. You know, and okay, people might say, yeah, psychological bullying. We don't want that on a show where kids are watching. But Firefly Funhouse has had a rabbit, albeit like a puppet, but it had a rabbit beaten to death with a hammer, and then Bray ate its guts. Like, okay, a little bit of psychological bullying is probably no worse than that. And these are issues that we do have in society. The same as cyberbullying and destruction of property through bullying are also issues that we have. And I don't necessarily think that they shouldn't use that sort of thing to start a feud. I just don't know how I feel about it being used for just the women, when I don't think that the WWE would book the men this way or that way. I just don't. I can't see it. I really can't see the situation that I said with Ricochet and Rollins or whatever. And it's just a really intriguing and sort of multi-layered thing that really sort of nagged at me with this morning. That I just really didn't know what to think of it, because, like I said, on one hand you could argue that it's new, fresh ways of starting a feud, of motivating the characters. But on the other hand, you could just see it as a sort of slight burial and implication that women are more petty than men. When was the last time we got a feud like this with a man? I'd really like to know. I just feel like with the men, it's usually about, you know, who can hit harder, who can wrestle better, who wants to be the champion more, who can put on the better matches, etc., etc. You know, whose yard it is. Whereas in anyone who's not sort of Becky or Charlotte gets booked in these weird, just sort of petty schoolyard drama storylines, and that's, yeah, it's just a weird dynamic that's really caught my attention, and I'd really like to hear what you guys have to say on it. Like I said, especially female fans. Obviously, everyone's welcome to give their opinion, but female fans, leave your comments down below. Let me know what you think of the Nikki and Alexa stuff, of the Ember and Deville and Rose stuff, and just how you feel about women in general in WWE and how they're represented. I'd love to hear what you've got to say, because this has really been rattling around in my head, and I was nervous about talking about it because I realised that it's sort of a touchy subject that I could make myself look quite ignorant with, but you know, there we go, we got through it. So let me know what you think about how women are represented in WWE. Next up, I wanted to talk about AEW and talk about their next pay-per-view, Fyter Fest. Now, we got some really exciting news about this earlier this week, as well as the card shaping up to be quite good so far, so I just wanted to have a little bit of a talk about it. So, it was announced by Kenny Omega at the EC the EC3 gaming conference. It was announced by I've just lost it. It was announced by Kenny Omega at the E3 gaming conference that Fyter Fest would be streamed live, and Cody has also confirmed this. He said that people will be able to watch Fyter Fest live on Bleacher Report, and there was a little bit more to it than that, but I'm struggling to think of the full details. I will link to a Pro Wrestling Unlimited video, which is where I get my wrestling news from, where he talked a little bit more about what Cody said, but nonetheless, Fyter Fest is going to be a free pay-per-view on Bleacher Report Live, and I think that's pretty awesome. It's just one of those little AEW things that they're doing, and I do think that there might be a reason for that, but I'm gonna get into it in a minute. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the card first. So it's shaping up to be a really strong show so far. So obviously you have Jon Moxley versus Joey Janela. That should be a really interesting match that I am definitely looking forward to. Moxley's debuted at Double or Nothing to a huge reaction. He had his match against Juice Robinson last week, which everyone absolutely loved, and now he's been announced for the G1 Climax tournament, and that should be really interesting. So it does seem like Joey Janela might end up taking the loss in that match, if I'm making an early prediction. It should be a really interesting hardcore match, though. I haven't seen anything of Joey Janela before this, and I'm sort of trying to purposely not go and look anything up about him, because I'd like that match to be my introduction to him. But I have seen what Moxley said on Road to Fighter Fest, where he he essentially implied that he was going to kill Joey Janela, or at least give Janela his wish of dying in the ring. He said that he doesn't give a damn about the ref's discretion or about his opponent's safety, and just basically warned Janela that he doesn't know what he's getting into. And that should be a really, really, really good match that I'm definitely looking forward to quite a bit. Then you've got Cody versus Darby Allin, which I think, again, should be a really interesting match. You've got Cody as this sort of... he's one of the top sort of... Even though he's a bit of a tweener when it comes to Dustin, he's one of the top faces in the company. He's one of the biggest stars, going up against someone that I've heard a few good things about from various people, including Going in Raw, who I definitely trust when it comes to that sort of thing. Apparently, if this is the same guy that I'm not getting mixed up, I've heard that he works skateboarding into his wrestling repertoire and has done various spots in matches with the skateboard. That could be really interesting and make for a really interesting match dynamic that I haven't seen before. That would be really interesting to see how the commentators could deal with that and how they put it over, and what Cody can do with that. And it should really help make Darby Allin look like a star, and I'm looking forward to that one. You've got Kenny and the Bucks. Sorry, my throat was just going. You've got Kenny and the Bucks versus Lucha Brothers and their mystery partner, and I have no knowledge of AAA or anything like that to give you a guess on who the Lucha Brothers might get as their tag partners, but that this match so far is the one that they've announced that I'm like, ooh, I'm not sure about that one, just because the Bucks match at Double or Nothing was so crazy that I couldn't keep up with it at all, and I'm sort of worried about it because I want to like it, I really do. I've heard so many good things about Kenny Omega. I've heard so many good things about the Young Bucks and the Lucha Brothers, for that matter. And I'm really looking forward to trying to get used to them, get behind them, and like start marking out for them. And I really hope that match can draw me in, and the commentators can do a good job of building up an effective mental image. But I'm just afraid that because it's such a big multi-man match, that I might get a little bit lost. The other multi-man match that we have, which was set up from being the Elite this week, which is another thing that I do struggle with. Luckily, I have my indie correspondent, Glenn, who makes detailed notes for me when it comes to being the Elite, and helps me know sort of what's going on and who people are, because there's a lot of musical segments to a being the Elite episode, a few things that are harder to follow. But one of the things that I could follow was Hangman Page calling one of the Bucks, I think Matt, about booking a match for Fyter Fest. He wanted MJF, but throughout the episode, as he was calling, there was horrible connection issues, and Hangman was choosing his words very, very poorly, mentioning things that could easily be misconstrued through bad signal as wanting to book him in a match against Jimmy Havoc or Jungle Boy, and eventually the match kept getting more and more people in until it was a fatal four-way between MJF, Jungle Boy, Jimmy Havoc, and Hangman Page. That one should be really interesting. Their segment at Double or Nothing was really entertaining, probably one of the highlights of the show. All four men are people that I'd like to see more of, that I haven't seen a lot of, especially MJF. His little segment in being the Elite as well, where he was in one of the schools putting up a poster of Cody, I think, and one of the kids was saying that the school might not be happy that they got a big giant poster of Cody Rhodes, so MJF presumably beat him up, which was which was pretty entertaining. Looking forward to that. I've never seen anything of Jungle Boy, so that should be fun too. And Jimmy Havoc, I've heard so many things about, and was such a character at Double or Nothing that I just can't wait to see him. And then and then Hangman Page, is clearly being positioned to be one of the top stars in the company, so it'll be fun to see a little bit more of him. So it's really stacking up to be a decent card right now, and just with the addition of a decent women's match, and they'll probably announce a few more. It'll just be I'm really looking forward to it. It's coming together as a really solid pay-per-view. But it has got me thinking, with the connections that the AEW may or may not have with the video gaming community through Kenny Omega, is it possible that we could get an AEW video game? Now, I wouldn't say that it'd be coming anytime soon. It would definitely, if they announce it, it's going to be like just an announcement of something far off in the future. But I just feel like, I don't know why, I just have this really strong feeling, and even before I found out that they were doing it live, that they were doing it free, I even thought then that I had this feeling that one of the reasons that they were doing it in the first place was so that they could maybe announce it. And then now that I've found out that it's live and they're sort of making a big deal out of that, they obviously want people to watch and get eyes on the product. And I just think that they're trying to compete with the WWE in every other way. Tony Khan surely has some sort of connections when it comes to the video gaming industry. I know that he has the sports teams that he has, and if they've been included in the video games, he might have had to deal with people at other points, and it'd just be really interesting, because they've, like I said, they've tried to compete with WWE in every other way. If they were to come and say, we've got a video game that's coming out, it'd be huge news, and it'd be probably end up being a big success, especially if they focus on the booking aspect of the shows. Obviously, the 2K WWE games are focused on letting you play the match, but if AEW was to bring out some sort of wrestling manager type game, like a GM mode or whatever, that rewarded you for booking good shows and good matches, etc., that'd be really interesting, and it'd fit in with the vibe that they've got. So that one has been rattling around in my head, and I just wanted to float that idea to see basically what you thought, whether you thought that whether you think that they might do that, whether it's not a possibility at all, or even whether you'd even be interested in that sort of thing. But yeah, that's pretty much all that I've got to say on the Fyter Fest topic. Really looking forward to this pay-per-view. It's shaping up to look like a really strong show again, and if I'm right about the video game thing, that could be like huge news too. So yeah, let me know your thoughts on Fyter Fest so far, and how do you feel about them putting on a free pay-per-view? The 24/7 Championship was meant to be a championship that could change hands at any time, anywhere, and yet we've had R-Truth as the champion mostly since its inception. And as much as I've really enjoyed the stuff that Truth has been doing, and Carmella is a huge part of that, because I actually think that it's quite sweet the way that Carmella is just determined to help Truth and help him keep that championship, and just their friendship and their dynamic, I think, has been really entertaining. It's one of the reasons why I wish that intergender or mixed tag divisions or something along those lines existed, because I'd love to see what Truth and Carmella could do in the ring a little bit more. And I've really enjoyed just seeing Carmella's friendship towards R-Truth and that dynamic that they've got. But I do just have to wonder, how long it's going to be before they actually give it to someone else, because I don't see the point in having a championship that's designed in nature to be able to change hands whenever, wherever, and be held by whoever at any time, being held by the same person. Now, it's probably because it's quite over. Those YouTube clips are getting massive hits, and it's not. It isn't bad at all. And I guess in a way you've got Truth defending that belt and letting other people show some character, especially someone like EC3 this week with the getting stuck in the lift thing and threatening to eat people if they had to be stuck in there too long, and the character that Drake Maverick's got to show, and Jinder Mahal having sort of somewhat of a resurgence after not being around for quite a while. But it does just make me wonder how long they're going to keep running with Truth, because as other people have pointed out, why would he even try and win it back? Because the gimmick is that he's exhausted and he's tired, and that it's ruining his life because he can't get a moment's peace. So why does he keep pinning people and winning it back? It'd be funny if they could find some sort of way of him accidentally pinning people so that he literally can't get rid of it. That'd be pretty funny. But I would like to see some of the other people get a chance. Someone like EC3, he got some really good reception this week from that elevator spot, and I really do think that with this 24/7 thing, if someone gets good reception, hotshot it to them, because if you like hotshotted the title to EC3 now, you could let him hold it for a week, maybe two, and if he's not getting a good reception, you could hotshot it back to Truth or have someone else take it off him. I don't want them to get lost in this routine of like, right, Truth is the champion, so we have to write his storyline, and then at the end of it, it's just another championship, which it is already, but at least it has an entertaining gimmick to it. So this one wasn't a particularly long one, but it was something that I just had a little bit of a think about this morning, that I just wish that there was a few other faces getting to hold that championship rather than Truth holding it as if it's just a normal championship. So what do you think? Who would you like to see be 24/7 champ? Do you think it's a complete bust, a complete waste of time? Or do you think that having Truth hold it and allowing people to play off him is a clever idea? Because I'm not sure where I fall on this one. Things might be looking up for the SmackDown Live Tag Team division. Chad Gable and Apollo Crews seem to be on a crash course to becoming a tag team. They were teamed up on live events this weekend, and apparently the match was amazing that they had against the Planet's champions, and Gable was then off taking notes while Crews was cutting a promo on SmackDown. So, if these guys are set to become a tag team, which is a pretty clever move in my opinion, neither of them are being utilised, neither of them have got anything to do. The tag team division needs more bodies, and I just think that those two could actually probably give us some really good chemistry. I want to see Chad Gable as a face again. It's been a long time. I really like Chad Gable. I enjoy his matches. I think that he's a great in-ring talent, and I actually think that he's pretty good at showing character, but I just prefer him as a face. And Apollo Crews has shown some decent character when it comes to the Titus Worldwide thing, and I would just be interested to see how those two could play off each other as a somewhat flashy face team that, you know, sort of shows off a little bit, might be a little bit cocky, but they can back it up, and just with those big flashy moves, etc. I'd just really like to see what they could do. And if they are set to become a tag team, you're then looking at a situation on SmackDown where you've got the Planet's champions, Rowan and Bryan, Rusev and Nakamura, Heavy Machinery, the B Team, Gable and Cruz, and I just think that that's actually that could have some pretty good, decent feuds between each of those people. I'd quite like to see Heavy Machinery taking on Gable and Cruz. I think that could be pretty. I think that could be pretty entertaining. By the way, Gable and Cruz is way, way too close to Gable and Rude for my mouth. I really keep wanting to say Gable and Rude. So if I do and I don't notice, I'm just making a disclaimer now that really... it's what my brain wants to say. But yeah, I think I'd like to see Rusev and Nakamura be used a little bit more. But other than that, I think that's a pretty decent tag team division, especially with the wild card rule that you can utilise and have the Usos mixing it up with those teams as well. Things could be looking up for the SmackDown Live tag team division. Gable and Cruz as a tag team. What do you guys think? I wanted to talk about Dolph Ziggler and Kofi Kingston. So, at Super Showdown last week, Kofi defended his championship against Dolph and he retained. But the retention was due to an involvement by Xavier Woods kicking Dolph in the face. Now, admittedly, Dolph was getting aggro with Xavier, but was this a clever move? Because now you've got Dolph cutting promos about Kofi betraying his morals, and Sami Zayn pointing out that the fans would be in outrage if it was the other way round, and it got me thinking about it. And it does seem a little bit like the wrong move to have made, because Kofi has been such a pure champion. He's been doing everything he can to defend that championship and be a good role model, etc., etc. So winning by somewhat cheap means, by having Xavier Woods kick Dolph and that lead to what was going on, that lead to the finish of the match, then it just seems a little bit of a stupid move, because that's a heel win. If that was a heel and they had their friend distract their opponent and then the heel picked up the win, everyone would be like, oh, what a heel, everyone would be booing them, etc., etc. But just because Kofi and Xavier are good friends and they're good people, they can get away with doing that sort of thing. And I just hope that they're going somewhere with it in the storyline. If they're going to carry on with it, then I hope that they're actually going somewhere with it, like Kofi resorting to those somewhat underhanded tactics every now and again, and Xavier and Big E trying to talk him out of doing that, or Big E and Xavier always getting involved and Kofi not needing them anymore, or just something like that. I hope something actually pays off from it, as opposed to it just being, oh, we want to end the match this way, and it doesn't matter whether it makes your face look like an idiot or a cheater or not, we're going to do it anyway. So yeah, another short one, but I just wanted to voice my opinion on that one. I just think if you're going to have a face win, you need to have them win in fair fashion, not by having their friend attack their opponent and then beat them, because that's a heel move. When it comes to the creative team in WWE, I always wonder what different ways there are that they could do things. Now, I've been throwing an idea backwards and forwards with one of my best friends, Dirty Dan, and I just wanted to float it on here and see what other people think. Now, I'm not sure whether this would be the best idea, whether it'd be even feasible, but I wonder if creative would be different if each division had its own writing team. So you have a dedicated writing team for the main event, for the mid-card belt, for the tag team division, and you have each team just writing for that division, and then anyone that's not in any of the championship divisions is in sort of a free division where you'd have writers writing storylines for those people, so in hopes to get them up into one of the championship scenes. I just think that if you had a dedicated team for each division, people would have more time to focus. As it is, you've got one writing team that's trying to juggle this and juggle that and trying to come up with all the ideas. Whereas if you have the main event have a writing team, and you have the Intercontinental Championship have a writing team, and the tag team division have one of their own, they can all focus on the wrestlers in that division, and only those wrestlers, and make the storylines matter and continue them week by week. So anyone not in those championship scenes can still have storylines dedicated, written to them, so they're not afterthoughts. I just really wonder how they could work it with that, because I just feel like it's just too much for one writing team. And yeah, fine, in the end it all comes down to Vince, and I know that's what everyone's going to say. It doesn't matter how many writers you have, how many different teams, in the end it all comes down to Vince. But if that's just what we say, then we can never talk about anything. And I do just wonder, basically, how it would work, whether that would even be a good thing, whether it would lead to people, wanting to book this guy strong when the other team is trying to book this person, and lead to just disagreements or whatever. But I'd like to see how it'd work and see how they could mix up creative, because it just seems that they're just so stuck in just uninventive ways. I mean, the fact that we've had Shane McMahon feuding with Roman Reigns, and now this last SmackDown he was back to feuding with The Miz, and it's just like, come on, give me some new ideas, give me some new matchups. And I just have been thinking a lot about how they could mix up creative. I'd like to hear what you guys think would be a good way for them to go. I think bringing in writers from different TV shows, etc., would be a cleverer idea. It needs to be approached as a TV show. When it comes to the women, I'd like to see, and I'm not just saying that women should write women's stuff and men should write men's stuff, but I'd like to see some women writers. I'd like to see, let's just take something like Orange is the New Black, or if you want a serious one, you've got Wentworth, the Australian prison drama that is one of my favourite shows ever. If you took someone that wrote a show like that it's focused on women, maybe you could have them write storylines that are a bit more relatable and real when it comes to women, as opposed to the stuff I was talking earlier on in the podcast. And if you had a team that was dedicated to the women's division, again, I feel like they could maybe have a bit more focus and try and think about it. So yeah, when it comes to the creative, what do you guys think of each separate division having dedicated writers that only write stories for those divisions? So that brings me to the end of the show. Now, if you have any thoughts on these topics, just let me know in the comments down below, as well as suggesting any questions or topics that you might want for a future mix-up. I hope that you've enjoyed this time as much as I have. I truly enjoy doing these podcasts. It's a blast. I really, really would like to hear what people have got to say about the women's wrestling thing. And other than that, I just want to wish you all a good day, really. So, if you want to keep up to date with WITD, make sure to hit that subscribe button and the notify bell. Don't leave yourself out in the cold. Come and mix it up with all of us. Right, guys, I'm off, and you should have a good one.